Impact of Influence.
Covering true crime throughout the Southeast.
I think this story is so revealing about these laws that have been bumping along in the background for 20 years in our country. And I think one of the things that I'm finding and I'm continuing to report out is that, we're so mad at each other all the time. And I think just being on the highway since the pandemic, and I've got kids that are learning to drive, people drive, they act the fool on the highway. They really do. And we're mad at each other. We are seeing more of these road rage homicides.
That is the voice of Valerie Bauerlein from the Wall Street Journal and the podcast Camp Swamp Road. Hello, friend. Matt Harris and Seton Tucker are always grateful, super grateful that you're spending time with us. And if you want to join in the conversation, Seton, tell them.
You can find us on Facebook at Impact of Influence and also on our YouTube channel.
The YouTube channel is growing. Great. Really happy.
It really has. Thank you for listening.
Yes. Punch that subscribe button when you head to the YouTube channel. And also, we want to thank Evergreen Podcast Company. That's what we're part of. And also our sponsors. We hope you'll support those folks as well. So in this episode, we're going to be revisiting the 2023 roadside shooting death of Scott Spivey in Horry County, South Carolina, with Wall Street Journal reporter and host of the Journal podcast, Camp Swamp Road, Valerie Bauerlein.
Yeah, we've done an episode with Valerie before on this story, and also another one with my dad, attorney Matt Simbita, to discuss the legal aspects surrounding this case.
Yeah, we're going to link those episodes in the show notes and also on the Facebook and YouTube pages. So if you need to, you can go back and listen to that. So, see, let's go back to the beginning and give them some of the basics on this.
So Scott Spivey was traveling home from a bar in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, when he became involved in this road rage situation with a man named Weldon Boyd and his passenger Bradley Williams. Now, after a 9-mile back-and-forth chase, Spivey pulled over. Now, there are questions as to what happened next, but Boyd and Williams both admit to firing weapons, but they claim they acted in self-defense. They say that Spivey got out of his vehicle and brandished a weapon. Now, Boyd and Williams both shot from inside Boyd's truck, and Spivey died inside his truck from a gunshot wound to the back.
In 2024, prosecutors decided they were not going to pursue criminal charges against Boyd or Bradley Williams, which brings us to
June of 2024, when a civil lawsuit was filed on behalf of the Spivey family by attorney Mark Tinsley for wrongful death. Now, during the discovery process, many things were revealed that brought about questions as to whether South Carolina's stand your ground law should apply.
After much public outrage, the AG's office agreed to take another look. And then in August of 2025, again, the office issued a statement confirming that it is their opinion that the South Carolina stand your ground law did apply in the shooting of Scott Spivey.
Now, however, in October of 2025, Alan Wilson, the Attorney General of South Carolina, running for governor, asked the Seventh Circuit solicitor, Barry Barnett, I believe that's Spartanburg, for an independent review of the findings.
We have yet to find out what that review is as of the time of this recording. So that's a little background, more on it as we get into someone who's really been on top of this, our guest, Valerie Bauerlein. And she is back. We like to call her friend. Valerie Bauerlein is with us from the Wall Street Journal. She is the author of the book, if you have the YouTube channel video up, The Devil at His Elbow, Alec Murdaugh and the Fall of a Southern Dynasty. She has that book, which has been doing great. She's also a podcaster with the 4 episodes she has of Camp Swamp Road, courtesy of the Journal. You look it up on podcast. Actually, to tell you the truth, the easiest way to find what we're going to talk about, Camp Swamp Road, is to actually put it into search as Camp Swamp Road. It's much easier to find that way. But anyway, Valerie, welcome, and thank you for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
You told us before we went on.
I always want you to say, "Hey, friend."
Hey,
hello, friend.
Hey, friend.
Hello, friend. You were just talking how well the book is doing, and the Audible version of the book and the hard copy is what printing did you say we're on here?
It's extraordinary. The book's been out over a year. We just went into the 6th printing of the hardback book.
Wow.
And the 4th printing of the paperback book. But, it is funny. It's because it's a true crime story and true crime fans are podcast people often. The audiobook is done incredibly well. It sold almost as much as the hardback copy. So
that's great.
I read the hardback, but I loved the audio because I thought the narrator of the audio was honestly the best that I've heard.
Can y'all hear Pete? I told Scott to keep Pete quiet, but Pete's downstairs.
I don't hear Pete.
No, we can't hear.
No, we don't hear. Pete is. I assume Pete's
I don't know about Charlotte, but it's beautiful weather here in Raleigh today. And so every time
Yes.
somebody walks by the front door, our sweet dog Pete goes a little bit nuts.
I'm glad you pointed out it was a dog and not like somebody you have caged up in the basement or something.
No,
We are
not at
talking
all.
true crime.
So speaking of Murdaugh, we'll hit this a little bit before we get into the Camp Swamp Road and Scott Spivey. You said you listened to the two-parter we had with Blanca, the housekeeper and family friend of the Murdaughs, and you had some thoughts.
I did. I just wanted to say I did listen to both episodes that y'all had with Blanca and with Fran, her co-author, who I know. And I thought you got so much really great information out of her. A couple of things that I didn't know, and I've spent a huge amount of time with Blanca. I just wanted to say I interviewed more than 200 people for this book, but Blanca was one of the most important. And y'all were kind enough to address the criticism, some of the comments that you were seeing on the YouTube page, and people questioning whether Blanca was really close with Maggie. And I just wanted to say, I vetted Blanca very deeply. I read all the cases that she was involved with. I listened to all the jail tapes. I talked to lots of people about her. Y'all, there's just nobody towards the end of her life that was as close to Maggie than Blanca. And her sister Marion, that was her core group. And I'll just illustrate that by saying, think about who you would ask to sing at your funeral. And they had a mutual.
I thought that same thing. I was like, why did we not? And I should point it out to people. She sung at the funeral. I mean, that's a big deal.
They had a
You don't
pact
ask
that
somebody
whoever
who was just a random, not close family friend.
They had a pact that whoever died first, the other would sing Amazing Grace at their funeral. And Maggie asked Blanca to do that, and she did. And because y'all remember, it dumped rain the day of the funeral.
Yeah.
They came back to Moselle, and she's standing up on that like kind of grand balcony there in the foyer, singing down to a group of people, a cappella. So I was in Hampton recently and went by Maggie and Paul's graves, and they're always decorated. And guess who decorates them? Blanca.
Wow.
So I just wanted to say, in my experience and from my understanding, Blanca is indeed very close to Maggie, and I've read some of her book and encourage your listeners to do so as well.
And I think in her book, she clears up some of these stuff that people have said about, the selling of some of Maggie's items of clothing. She'll clear all of that up, as well as her involvement in some of the cases where she was translating for Alec Murdaugh. So I think,
well, and I think too, and Blanca alluded to this when in y'all's conversation that she wasn't at the scene, that she felt like that the detectives didn't take her as seriously as they took some of the lawyers, and y'all, they almost didn't call Blanca. They almost didn't call Blanca to testify.
stand.
Yeah, she said that. That was so shocking
It's
to me.
extraordinary. But then you think about it, and I often think about this. Some of the most extraordinary and powerful witnesses were women, and women that work closely with the family. And that includes Blanca and Shelley Smith, and also, Marion Proctor, the sister.
Yeah.
So I think, I was glad to hear Blanca's interview and eager to read the rest of her book when it comes out in just a couple weeks.
Yes. Well, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Your podcast, it's great. Again,
I mean, deep dive into, a lot of these phone calls that were released in the aftermath with from Boyd's phone, as well as your interviews with Jennifer Foley. She was such a powerful voice. Speaking of women, she was such a powerful voice for her brother. Everything that she said, you can tell she's fighting. And, we interviewed a man who lost his daughter a few weeks ago. And he said, I haven't really grieved for my daughter yet.
Is that Logan Federico?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he said, I haven't really grieved for my daughter yet because I'm fighting. And it was almost the same sentiment that I got listening to your podcast with Jennifer Foley.
No, and I talk with Jennifer almost every day, and we did a follow-up interview with her earlier this week for more episodes. And I asked her, have you had time to grieve now, 2 years in, when there's starting to be some momentum in the case? And she said, no, it's still just, it's trying to get to the next thing. So she really has been an extraordinary person to observe in how she's led this effort to find out what happened on Camp Swamp Road.
If she hadn't led this effort, we'll start with this part. Because this certainly, I assume, would not have happened, which is the Horry County law enforcement officers that were either retired or let go in the investigations into Horry County. The deputy chief, Brandon Strickland, resigned in March. Damon Vescovi was, I think, fired immediately after
In
the
April.
video of the note. So explain who has been dismissed or charged, and what is the status and the continued investigation into the Horry County police officers and the way they dealt with this incident.
Yeah, and to your question about would any of this have happened absent Jennifer, and the answer is no. So Scott Spivey was killed on Camp Swamp Road, September 9th, 2023. And starting September 10th, Jennifer Foley and her parents and cousins, and they live all in that area. Several of her cousins are former law enforcement officers with Horry County. And they said, something's not right here. They said starting the 10th and the 11th, Weldon Boyd, the driver and one of the killers, is very close with the deputy chief. We have questions about that. We have questions about what's on his phone. Why didn't you take his phone? They were saying these things from the very beginning, but not. Police didn't really follow up on what they were saying, I guess is the generous way to say it.
Police investigating their own people. So
no, and she didn't even have and this is one of the most stunning things I think about the way the law is written in South Carolina, because in a stand your ground case, Scott Spivey was not a victim. He was considered the perpetrator. He was the bad guy, right? And the guys, Weldon Boyd and Bradley Williams, who were acting in self-defense, were the victims. And so that means that the Spivey family, they don't have victims' rights, which means they don't even get to know the identity of the person that killed their loved one, right?
Oh,
so
wow.
they wouldn't have known Weldon Boyd's name, except he went on Facebook right after the shooting and talked about it in some length. Isn't that so no, we wouldn't have known absent Jennifer's doggedness. The case was closed officially in April of 24. She filed a civil lawsuit through her attorney, Mark Tinsley, in June of 24, and got a bunch of material and civil discovery that she didn't have access to from the police files. They wouldn't have given it to her, but for the civil discovery process. And she found, as y'all know, 8 hours of phone calls, the secretly recorded phone calls. And there's roughly 30 plus hours of police and body cam video that showed in real time what was actually happening. And it was completely different than what was happening in the written report as she'd been provided.
Yes.
And there was also the discovery. I think you were the one who discovered there was the body cam video. There was a portion of time that the body cam footage was turned off.
Oh, simultaneously, all the body cams go off at the same time at 7:10. He's killed at 5:58. They all go off at 7:10, and they stay off until 9:13. And guess what happened at 9:11? They towed Scott Spivey's body in his truck for 25 miles to the Conway impound lot. So no, I think we have been able to FOIA a lot of some of the footage that was mislabeled, incorrectly labeled as robbery or other things. And we've been able to review some of the footage that was not initially provided. And yeah, there's just no body cam footage for 2 hours between 7:10 and 9:11. And so we don't know what was happening on the scene.
Right. The one we've talked about, the body being towed, you just mentioned ago, it was hot. The body was not removed from the car, and you talked to people, investigative purposes, attorneys and police officers and such. That is not the norm, to keep a body in a car and tow it away.
Correct. I talked with several coroners in South Carolina and just said, hey, is this even legal to do? And there's real questions. And I think that Horry County has reasons to be concerned about their liability here, because the way the statute is written, a body in a homicide has to be in the possession of the coroner or their deputy. It has to go to the coroner. And y'all have interviewed Sabrina Gass, the coroner there in York County. She's been in office a really long time. I asked her, I was like, have you ever had, I think like 18 years or something like that, she's been doing this work. Have you ever towed a body in a car? And she said, Absolutely not. And the only, except for one time, and it was a terrible wreck on the side of the road where we couldn't extricate the body, and it was a busy road, and people were trying to take pictures. That was the one time in many years. So no, it's not done. There's real questions about the legality around it. And if you talk to tow truck drivers in Horry County, they'll tell you that they've never done it either. It was very unusual. And as we now know, the deputy chief, Brandon Strickland, tells Weldon Boyd the next morning, Weldon said, I thought it was weird they towed his body. And he goes, well, I did that for you to protect you in a civil case, to handle the body in a certain way in case the family sued you.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Which is weird because Evie's, if it was stand your ground, you can't have a civil case, but we'll get more to that in a second. So
yeah.
It doesn't really, but so he's the first domino to fall, I think. Is he the first one that gets,
Brandon Strickland was the first.
Okay.
Yes.
He's
Jennifer Foley, the sister, found the calls in mid-February.
Yeah,
and
like
Mark
Super Bowl
Tinsley,
time,
her lawyer,
I think, right?
Yeah, at Super Bowl weekend.
Yeah.
Mark Tinsley, her lawyer, tells Horry County, provides the calls to the Horry County, says, y'all need to listen to these. And they immediately force out Brandon Strickland, the deputy chief, and start an internal investigation. So that was in mid-March. And then Damon Vescovi, the sergeant on the scene, was fired because, as we know, he was coaching Weldon Boyd to act like a victim. There have been other officers who were disciplined, several other officers. But we're waiting for the results of this South Carolina SLED, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division. We're waiting for the results of their investigation into misconduct before we know kind of the breadth of what the level of the misconduct that actually happened there.
And what, Vescovi, I think I read this morning, he was an officer for 23 years. I mean, it wasn't like he was a newbie.
No, it wasn't. And he was an officer who'd been there a long time. He's married to a woman who teaches at school there and was on the town council. They're a well-known local family that is part of the fabric of the community. But he had a troubled history there. He'd been disciplined a number of times and actually demoted for threatening a person in his car with a gun. So he was not. He was an officer that he even says it on the own body cam that night. I can't wait. I'm 23 years in, and I can't wait to retire.
I have one question. I don't remember you talking about during the podcast. The recordings that Weldon Boyd had on his phone, because he was recording because he had girlfriend issues and whatnot. How did law enforcement get those from him? I assume they have to subpoena, or did he volunteer? Like, how did that happen? Do we know?
It's a really strange circumstance. So there's an app you can get on your phone that will allow you to record your calls, and you can kind of set it to record all the calls or some calls or manually do it. And he had that app on his phone. But as you know, the homicide, the killing was September 9th, 2023. He doesn't turn over his phone to SLED for download until late November. And so 2 months. So it's not clear. We can see these files that were on the phone. There's internal redactions. So you'll have like a 28-minute call between Weldon Boyd and Brandon Strickland, but then like 20 minutes of it will be redacted. Someone erased it. We don't know who that was. So there's some evidence that maybe he or someone else knew these calls were on the phone and tried to get rid of them and just didn't get rid of them.
Yeah, that's so curious. Why? Yeah,
it's very curious.
But the family was questioning. Listening to the podcast, the family was questioning. Hey, you have Scott's phone. Why are you not seizing? Because we're seeing all this stuff online. We're seeing that they're posting photos and stuff that they have on their phone. Why are you not taking Weldon Boyd and Bradley, Bradley
Williams?
Yes.
No, and we can see that he was taking photos of Scott Spivey's dead body minutes after he was killed, and sending them to friends on Snapchat, including a group, and forgive me for saying this, called Whores of North Myrtle Beach. It was a Snapchat group where guys who were concerned their girlfriends or fiancés were cheating on them would share information. Ugh. So yeah, he was actively collecting, critical information on his phone the whole evening. So it's not clear whether anyone remembered those calls were on there or thought they had removed them. But what is known is when SLED did a download of Weldon Boyd's phone in January, finally completed that. It's a mess, y'all. I've got the big file. It is 70 gig. It's thousands and thousands of items, and you don't really know what you're looking at. And SLED has said we were very much looking for a video. There was a rumor, and Weldon Boyd himself had said there was video that was taken of the encounter. So they were looking for that, and they didn't find it, so they kind of stopped looking. And
Gotcha.
and the file was closed. And it wasn't until all the contents of the phone was turned over with everything else in the 70 gig civil discovery file that Jennifer Foley was the first one that we're aware of who ever listened to these calls.
And it was quite the undertaking, as you said. There's so many
No,
calls.
we were going through them together a couple of days later, and I remember the first time I heard some of them, particularly ones that were like, I know it's fucked up to say, but I had a fucking blast. I had a
I
good
know that
time.
was, yeah.
That's just extraordinary. It's extraordinary. It hits so viscerally when you hear that because it does raise the question. Like if you had a fun, and Jennifer says this in the podcast, as is Mark Tinsley, if you had a blast, are you in fear for your life? And so it was actually important evidence that gets at what was actually happening that night.
Well, he was definitely very cavalier about the whole thing. He was going to get
Tear
teardrop tattoos.
and
It didn't seem that his buddy Bradley Williams was as active in the conversations, but I guess he's also a quieter guy. But certainly Weldon Boyd seemed prideful almost of what went down in some of these conversations.
And I should say that they both maintain that they did nothing wrong. That they acted within the law, and they may very well that argument may very well carry the day, because their lawyers say we don't know why Horry County put their thumb on the scale. We don't know why Horry County tried to help these guys. They didn't need the help. The law gives them enough protection because it doesn't matter if you chase someone for miles down the highway. If they get out of their vehicle with their gun in their hand and you stay in your vehicle where you have a right to be, you can have the right to defend yourself with deadly force, full stop. But no, there is evidence in the calls and then also in the text messages. We have Bradley Williams's text messages too. He doesn't brag about what happened. Actually, his wife says the next morning, "How are you doing? How was it?" And he said, "Well, just a typical day with Weldon." That was about as much as he said. But
And at one point he says in one of the tapes, not to interrupt, one of the tapes he's saying, why couldn't you just let it go? Something like that, basically.
Oh, the shooting's at 5:58, and within less than a minute, once those gunshots go down, and on the audio that Weldon was recording inside the vehicle, it's so loud. It's just shockingly loud and hard to hear. And as the shots finally die down, you can hear Bradley Williams say, "Why couldn't we fucking leave him alone?" And so I think that Bradley Williams has been quieter and certainly not posted anything about it on social that I'm aware of.
And everything he's here says Weldon Boyd was the killer. Do we know that for sure? Was there bullets?
They both, South Carolina has in the law, I think, and I'm not a criminal lawyer, but as I understand it, the hand of one is the hand of both. And so they're both killed Scott Spivey because they were both there shooting their guns. Weldon has said, and I think the physical evidence indicates they're in the interior of a big truck on the side of the road. Scott Spivey is parked 25 yards up the road on the driver's side of the car. And so you can't see. I've gone to that part of Camp Swamp Road and stood with one of our producers and had her park where Scott was and stand. If you're there, it's very hard to see if you've got an obstruction like the truck that Scott was standing beside. So it's certainly easier to imagine that, Weldon says, "I killed him. It was my kill shot that killed him." But it's certainly physically, it seems likelier that the shots that were coming from Boyd's side of the vehicle would have been the one that killed him. And he was killed outside the vehicle, right? While he was standing outside, because he was shot right underneath the arm, entering through his back.
But gets back into the car.
Then he jumps back into the car and collapses over the console and dies within seconds, as we understand it.
Okay, two things. When we had done a few episodes, we interviewed you, my dad. Two things that kept coming up was one, let's talk about this 911 dispatcher never tells.
Multiple dispatchers, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
never well, multiple, but the person who is talking to Weldon Boyd at the time never once advises him, "Hey, let's de-escalate this, pull over." I mean,
Mhm.
that could have really prevented this tragedy. Have you talked to anybody who is familiar with training of people who handle 911 calls?
Well, I think that the procedures would require or I guess suggest that you immediately tell someone to not follow that person. Give us the license tag, their last known location, and fall back. That is what the procedures are in law enforcement generally, and Horry County in particular. And Weldon Boyd had actually called 911 some years earlier on someone that had robbed the restaurant where he owned at the time, and he was chasing him. And the dispatcher did say, "Don't follow him." And so he talks about that incident in some of his calls. So the 911 dispatcher really should, that on Weldon's call, really should have, as a best practice, said, "Don't follow him." The family could have pursued an action against the county for that dispatcher's act, but they did not, and are not, as I understand it. They're concerned chiefly right now with what in the world did police do to try and help Weldon after the shooting, more so than what the dispatcher a serious mistake they made in real time.
After, so eventually you get a sit down with the South Carolina governor, Henry McMaster, who you knew from your previous times reporting in South Carolina. And important, I guess, to point out, I think it was '06 was he AG, who
Mhm.
was part of this building of this version of the stand your ground law. I'm like, do I have the facts on that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So you get a sit down with him. What is his response to the questions you have? Talk to us about that.
So Henry McMaster has been in political life a really long time. I first met him in 2000 when I was a reporter at the state newspaper starting out. He was head of the Republican Party, and Dick Harpootlian, another familiar name, was head of the Democratic Party. So I've covered both of those men for 25 years in public life. And Henry went on to, after he led the Republican Party and he'd been U.S. attorney at one point, he went on to be attorney general for a number of years. And the stand your ground laws began in Florida in 2005, right? And it was a response led by the NRA, but very politically popular, to the fear of carjacking. Like, if you have the right to defend yourself in your home is your castle. The castle doctrine is the longstanding self-defense law that lets you defend yourself in the home. But there was a move in Florida that spread quickly to other states that wanted to allow you to protect yourself anywhere you had a right to be, which is primarily your vehicle, right?
Or your
So
business
Florida's law,
or something like that. Your
or like,
business
yeah,
too, yeah.
or vehicle side of the road.
Yeah.
So 2005, Florida passed their law. 2006, South Carolina passed a very, very similar law. And a first generation of these laws. There are now 28 states that have them, but it's the very earliest ones that are the most broad in terms of the protections they offer people. And so Governor McMaster was Attorney General when this law passed. So I wanted to sit down and ask him, what do you make of this law? And then also, as y'all know, Governor McMaster is somebody who takes a lot of pride in the beauty of the state and the reputation of the state. And I just wanted to get his response to this incident in Horry County that was really attracting a lot of state and national attention. So kind of those two issues are the main thing I want to talk with him about.
He first though he's like, "Are you filming me?" I don't think he had heard of
This
a
for
pod.
is this for
He,
you know,
he
are you
did not. I don't know that he was totally familiar with the podcast format.
no, it was kind of funny. I'm can y'all hear Pete? I'm sorry.
Oh
No,
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 we
that's
hear
good.
him at
Yeah,
all.
yeah, yeah.
I'm texting my husband to ask him if he can give him like a dog biscuit or something, because yeah, he's very.
We can't hear him at all.
Oh,
No.
good. Well, sorry.
Yeah.
No, he was so Henry McMaster. He invited me to the governor's mansion, and we sat in the library. I think one of the things about Governor McMaster that stands out compared to Governor Haley or Governor Sanford in particular, they were more casual in their interactions with people, more approachable in terms of and that was part of their style. But Governor Master loves the pomp and the history of the role, right? So, and I sat down with him for a long time. the history of the Murdaugh family, who his grandfather had gone to law school with. So, the family. So we sat in the library, and I told him I was there to interview. He said, "Are you taking a picture?" And I said, "No, this is for a podcast." And he was like, "A podcast? Oh,
No
amazing."
idea.
Yeah, amazing. But we spent a long time together, and he said that he was AG, which means he implemented the law and backed the law, but it was the legislature that passed the law, right? So he wasn't involved in the writing of it, but he thinks it's an important law that you should have the right to protect yourself. But he also he raised some serious questions about the application of the law in the death of Scott Spivey, and said he thought it was a tragedy, and kind of offered his condolences to the family. So he threaded a needle, but he did say how sorry he was, and he wasn't sure that he had questions about the way it was applied in this case.
But he was not going to put pressure on the current attorney general, who's also running for governor now, and Alan Wilson.
He felt like it wasn't his place to tell the AG how to do that job, especially since he knows how complicated and hard it is to do that job. You have to make a lot of tough decisions all the time. But he also, but in fairness, SLED answers up to the governor, right? So he has the ability to apply to show the cases he's interested in when he wants to, in different ways.
Oh yeah, Alan Wilson is going to take his call. Right. But that's the next stage. You get to talk to Alan Wilson, the attorney general. And it's important to point out also that he's running for governor. So there's some things in play there. So I remember,
because there's a lot of, with your podcast and other news media covering the Spivey case, there's a tremendous amount of coverage and pressure probably on Alan Wilson going into your interview with him.
Yeah. And he said 15 minutes he was going to give you.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
Had to get straight to it.
Yeah.
And I've known Alan a long time. We were all in court together, right, for 6 weeks, and sat behind him and exchanged pleasantries every day in the Murdaugh case. And his wife was a reporter at WIS when I was a reporter at the State, and my roommates worked for WIS. So I've been acquainted with him at least for a very long time. But it was the interview was tense at times. And he did say, "I've got 15 minutes and, let's go." I said, "Let's go." But he really has been under an immense amount of pressure. Jennifer Foley said to me earlier this week, if Alan Wilson posts about a baby or a puppy, all the comments are, hashtag justice for Scott Spivey. And there's some truth to that on social media.
No, there is truth to that, because, when we covered Logan Federico's case on our podcast, under our episode, there were a ton of people who were saying justice for Scott Spivey,
Mm-hmm.
which are two separate things. And I'm like, why are we saying this under Logan's case? So I get that.
Yeah.
No, and it's I talked with Governor McMaster about this at some length, and also with Vincent Shaheen. Horry County decided the governor's race for Henry McMaster and for Nikki Haley when she ran against Shaheen. Yeah. And I say that because, we always think of Greenville as being this, this massive Republican bloc. And it is. It's always been the behemoth, that upstate bloc that decides elections. And where y'all are too, there's a lot of growth kind of in that Rock Hill, Fort Mill area as well. But nothing compares to Horry. And so Horry County is growing so quickly, and it is so conservative, that in Governor McMaster told me the story, but he was running against John Warren who, back in the day, when he was nominated, he became governor when Nikki Haley was elevated to UN ambassador, but he had to run 2 years later for the seat. And during the primary, the returns were coming in, and John Warren had 71% of the vote in Greenville. And his chief of staff, "Governor, I'm so sorry. This isn't looking good. You can't win if your opponent got 71% of the vote in Greenville." But guess who got 70% of the vote in Horry and won handily? Henry McMaster.
Wow. It's
growing so quickly. It's so conservative. And the voters there, many of them are retirees from the Rust Belt. It's the heart of, the first big Trump event, I covered it in 2016, was in Myrtle Beach. So it is a very conservative area. And the sentiment on the ground there is, what the heck? What the heck with this case? And many, many people, all 12 of the Horry County commissioners are Republicans. They're all white. Many of them carry on a regular basis, but they unanimously sent a note, right, to Governor McMaster and said, hey, we believe this was prematurely deemed self-defense. Take a look at it. The pressure is from the Republican base in many regards, and a very important part of the state if you're running for election to be governor.
But when you did the interview,
that's really important because
so he's balancing, like he
who
thinks, and I think that he truly is convicted that the right interpretation of the law is the one that his office has offered, which is that Weldon Boyd stayed in his truck, Scott Spivey got out of his truck. That is the law as it's written, and I think he truly thinks that's the law. And he may be right.
And when he said to you,
but the political reality, so he's got to deal with the legal reality as Attorney General, but the political reality as a candidate is that I don't remember a case like this in South Carolina that has had kind of this groundswell of public interest.
And that's what people are talking about. People are like, wait a second. I've got a beef with somebody. All I have to do is shoot them from inside my truck and I'm good.
But one of the things he mentioned, which wasn't mentioned, it hasn't been mentioned a lot. Your dad, who's an attorney, talked about it, but Wilson mentioned it briefly, was the citizen's arrest part, if you will, which really hasn't been played up that much because you'd be hard pressed to believe that's what he was doing. But nonetheless, the law, as written, person is presumed to have a reasonable fear of imminent peril of death or great bodily injury to himself or another person when using deadly force that is intended or likely to cause death or great bodily injury to another person. And the person, it goes on from there, which is if he reasonably believes it is necessary to prevent death or great bodily injury to himself or another person, or to prevent the commission of a violent crime. So that is a whole nother part of this that I guess he could say that guy was driving erratically. He had a gun. He's never said this, but right, that is a part of the law, right?
Meaning the citizen's arrest part?
Yeah.
It was originally discussed when the case first happened, that was a possible defense for Weldon Boyd and Bradley Williams. But as I understand it, that was never pursued by their legal team because there are a couple of requirements. You have to act in like if you're going to say you're a surgeon, you have to act like a surgeon would. If you're going to say you're enacting a citizen's arrest, you have to act like law enforcement would, meaning you would have to say, Matt Harris, I am arresting you. You have to say, this is my intention. This is what I stop in the name of the law, whatever you would need to say. And you also, the laws on pursuit and when law enforcement can pursue a driver are very strict now to prevent needless accidents and injuries. So, and both men were going very, very fast in areas where the speed limit was 45. They might've been going 80 or 85. And so you cannot break the law while enacting a citizen's arrest. And I think that was another consideration.
Well, I wanted to get back to what Wilson said. So when you spoke with Wilson, he said, it doesn't matter. These comments that Boyd made, to others didn't matter. It was really what was his state of mind at the time. And he thought that the 911 call was kind of the best representation of his state of mind at the time. It's kind of this dichotomy that that was what they were saying was his state of mind was this 911 call, but then really just some of these subsequent messages that he texted people really say what his real state of mind was. What does the family say to that?
Well, yeah, it's a real question. So Alan's point was the contemporaneous moment is the most important when he's saying, I'm chasing this guy is going, he's acting erratically, he's acting crazily. That matters in the moment. And then afterwards, he says he had a blast or he was chasing him or, I was mad or all the different things he says. That could be bluster. That could be something that's just sort of puffed up, unfortunate remarks. According to Alan, but I did after the interview ran, I had a former federal prosecutor say, that's not the law. I mean, he's actually telling you what he thinks about so there's, as I understand it, and again, I'm not a lawyer, there's debate about when you talk about how you feel or what your motivation was, there's debate about what's allowable and what's indicative of your state of mind.
And then he, if he would press charge, if you indict him, that sort of thing, then that would
Yeah.
all be hashed out in court. So I
Yes.
guess Alan Wilson is assuming that if he went to court, all that stuff would be tossed.
And we just don't know,
Yeah.
because now we're kind of on two fronts here. The SLED investigation into the misconduct at the Horry County Police Department is wrapped up and is being turned over to this special prosecutor that the attorney general subsequently named a couple days after that interview ran. So that's kind of happening on the criminal front, and the attorney general gave that prosecutor permission, or asked him to consider the underlying homicide if there was reason to believe that it was other than stand your ground. So that's kind of happening in the criminal context. But in the civil context, the family's lawsuit against Weldon Boyd and Bradley Williams is proceeding, and civil rules of evidence, as I understand them, are very different. So, and it's in front of a judge, not a jury. So a judge has a lot of latitude, and the family feels strongly, their attorney feels strongly, that the judge is going to hear those calls. So, we're kind of in uncharted territory, and it's one of the reasons the Wall Street Journal is so invested in this story. Because these stand your ground killings happen hundreds of times a year, and we know very little about them because the investigation becomes a black box for those reasons, that the bad guy is the person who often is the dead person. So we care about it because it's happening more than maybe we're aware of, but also because in South Carolina, if you're found to be standing your ground in a criminal context, you have immunity in the civil context. So you have civil immunity. You can't be sued for wrongful death.
Let me ask you this. So like you said, we have got these criminal things that are going on there. I
Yeah.
guess there's a review. Alan Wilson has requested a review of their determination that stand your ground applied, right? So that's being
Yes.
reviewed.
Is that the newest?
Is that the newest? And how does the civil need to kind of halt until they determine this criminal stuff, or what? How does that all work?
It's, I actually made a little flow chart for my editors the other day of the different possibilities, but the answer is we really don't know. The criminal, it's Barry Barnett in Spartanburg is, kind of 200 miles away from Horry County. Very much a lifetime prosecutor is the person that Alan Wilson asked to look over this investigation, both starting with misconduct, but the underlying killing, if he had reason to believe it was not, they had made the wrong decision about charges. So that's proceeding here in late October. But the judge in the civil lawsuit would like to go ahead and hold this key hearing in the case, and is trying to get that held by the end of this year. And it would be the first of its kind. I've asked many, many lawyers, and we believe it's the first of its kind in South Carolina, where in a civil proceeding, a wrongful death lawsuit, Weldon Boyd and Bradley Williams would go in front of the judge. Their attorneys would make the case for why they were standing their ground. And if the judge agrees with them, then the civil lawsuit goes away. It's dismissed. But if not, then the civil lawsuit proceeds, and it potentially increases pressure on the law enforcement side to charge Boyd and Williams. So that's what we don't.
One judge has already said, yeah.
Confused by that.
Yeah, I don't think you're saying
they're
right.
not.
But
they weren't facing criminal charges at the time. Does that give this civil immunity for the stand your ground? Like, it just seems, I don't know. It was very confusing
it's a very confusing law. And so originally the AG's office had said in writing that we believe this is a stand your ground case. But the way the law works, to enjoy a stand your ground defense and get that immunity, it has to be a judge who makes that decision. And that typically happens in a criminal case. Like if you're charged in a criminal matter, say a homicide or domestic violence matter for that matter, and you're charged in a criminal court, if you believe you're standing your ground, you can ask for a stand your ground hearing to in front of a judge in the criminal context. And if the judge agrees with you, then you're immune from criminal prosecution. That's normally where it happens, as a judge in the criminal court.
Oh, okay.
But in this case, things normally never get to the civil side, because there is the civil immunity for stand your ground cases. And then separately, most of these cases do occur in a car, right? And cars, I learned more about personal injury law than I ever thought I needed to know working on this Murdaugh book because of the personal injury law is the family business. But in if someone dies in their car, is killed in their car, it's not the fault, generally speaking, of the manufacturer or the insurer, right? So it's not it's not Allstate's fault that there was a homicide in your car. So one of the first things they'll do is ask to be dismissed as a defendant. So there's no money. All that is to say, there's nobody has tried these cases in a civil context in South Carolina in 20 years because you enjoy civil immunity and there's no money to take the case. And a lot of the reason that this case is proceeding is because Mark Tinsley, who is the attorney, personal injury lawyer in Allendale, who was such a key figure in the Murdaugh case, Jennifer Foley, the sister, they followed the Murdaugh case. They live, 4 hours from Allendale, but they followed the Murdaugh case, and on a lark or just a whim, not a whim, I don't want to dismiss it. I mean, they took a chance and called Tinsley and said, "Hey, this happened to my brother." And he's like, "That doesn't, how can you chase a man 9 miles, shoot him in the back and call it self-defense?" He's a hunter. He owns dozens of guns. He carries regularly, but it didn't sit right with him. So he took the case and is not getting paid for it at this point. Just, he took it because it sounded wrong to him.
And if he is successful in this case, the money would not come from Weldon Boyd's auto insurance. It would just come from his personal assets.
He's being sued personally. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just back up just for a second to talk about, because you interviewed Alan Wilson, as we mentioned, but then this new advancement in the case happened, which is just wide open. He's opened it, and the judge you mentioned, or the former prosecutor, is running it. But that happened after your interview.
A couple of days after the interview. Yes.
Okay. So it is.
And it was something in the interview, after the interview aired, it was something in that interview that Alan Wilson said he would not do. He said that would be the political solution. He said, I don't have anyone friends to reward or enemies to punish here. I have to do the thing in the eye of the law. And so it was surprising to me that within 3-4 days, he appoints a special prosecutor, and not just into the misconduct, but into the underlying homicide as well.
The Stand Your Ground has this different layer of, like, when you hear the case, there's the strict law, and then there's what some might consider morality or better options. And so I think that is a tough battle, right? When you're weighing, like, legal is one thing, and is like, what the hell were you doing chasing the guy, is another. And that's where a weird battle happens. And because the law, there's not different jurisdictions, different prosecutors, and all the different circuits in South Carolina bring different cases. And so some prosecutors will say, "No, I don't think you're standing your ground," and they'll be quite aggressive about it. But in most of these cases are very nuanced, and many times there were several witnesses on the scene at Camp Swamp Road who saw some part of the chase, but there's nobody that saw the shooting itself except for Weldon Boyd, Bradley Williams, and Scott Spivey. So in a case where the only other witness is dead, these are hard cases to make. So all that is to say, the law is difficult because it's not prosecuted evenly across the state. It's not adjudicated, the case. It's evenly across. Different judges hear different things. So it's a fascinating moment that we're in regarding this case. And it's written so broadly too, as another issue with the whole thing. You can catch the podcast. There's 4 episodes, but more to come, you're telling us?
More to come. I think, we're very, I think this story is so revealing about these laws that have been bumping along in the background for 20 years in our country. And I think one of the things that I'm finding, and I'm continuing to report out, is that, we're so mad at each other all the time. And I think just being on the highway since the pandemic, and I've got kids that are learning to drive, people drive, they act the fool on the highway. They really do. And we're mad at each other. And South Carolina is a place that has this stand your ground law, and then also has open carry, right? As of a couple years ago. So there are more people carrying more guns in more places, and this very broad law that allows you to defend yourself. We are seeing more of these road rage homicides. Or even, and y'all remember, like down in Myrtle Beach, there was a homicide over a parking place at Chick-fil-A. I mean, it's
I had
percolating.
somebody was driving down 77 in Rock Hill, a year ago, and they said they honked their horn, and then somebody pulled up next to them and
Jeez.
brandished a weapon. I mean, it is real, and I think it's a good thing that this is being explored, especially considering I think personal injury attorneys may not take these cases because, like you said, there's maybe not a lot of money in them.
Yeah.
And the families don't have a lot. They Jennifer Foley, Scott Spivey's sister, is meeting with different elected officials and just asking for some consideration for stand your ground families, because they don't apply. There's a victims assistance program through the state that's been very popular, and it allows you to have access to police files and regular updates, and an ombudsman to help you. Like, you remember Trisha Allen, who was in the Murdaugh case every day. She plays that role for a lot of the AG's cases. But families whose loved ones were accused in a stand your ground case, they don't have access to that. And so one of the things that
victims, right?
They're not considered a victim. So they don't even have the files to take to a personal injury lawyer and say, this is what happened. It's a real, it's very unusual that we have access to all this information, and especially these recorded calls that give us a real window into what was going on behind the scenes and in the most private moments of these two men.
Well, that big macro thing is how tight law enforcement and others are with the FOIA thing, having to file a Freedom of Information Act, and then they only give you half of it. And they don't really, just be transparent. Let everybody see and judge for themselves. But and you let everybody see for themselves when you get in the podcast. It is the Wall Street Journal, the Journal. But again, I'm just giving you a little heads up. Best way is on the search to type in Camp Swamp Road and find Valerie's great work.
It can't there, and because it's part of the Journal. It's a co-production with the Journal podcast and Spotify, which is but if you have Spotify, there is a Camp Swamp Road playlist you can go to.
Oh,
and then
okay.
also, if you
That's a good way.
Okay,
Yeah.
I sometimes listen on Spotify. I should have gone to Spotify first.
Yeah.
But then also on the WSJ.com, there is a landing page with all of our coverage. We've done 3 big page one investigations as well, with lots of audio and video clips. So there's a Camp Swamp Road landing page at WSJ.com.
It was crazy. Like, we had some neighbors over, and they were telling me about their podcast, and all the neighbors kind of got into a heated debate about the situation. So people are talking.
Well, and we're not supposed to read the comments, but you read the comments. And there was one about episode 4 who said, for the first 3 episodes, which is when we play the body and dash cam footage of what happened, we play some of the recorded calls. He's like, for the first 3 episodes, in my mind, I thought this was a murder. But when I heard the AG make his argument, I realized they have a pretty solid defense. So I think it is one that you can see, different people can see it with different ways. It's not black and white at all.
For sure.
But my hat's off to y'all. And Matt's been in radio a long time, but I'm used to being in print, right? Writing, and to be out there in your voice, and your voice is different, right? Your personality a little bit more.
And then try to go to YouTube and you have to look at yourself.
I don't know. And I grew up. So the homicide happened in Horry County, 2 miles south of the North Carolina line, right? And so if it happened in North Carolina, we'd have a different conversation completely. I do believe, and I'm told, murder charges would have applied 2 miles north. But I grew up 1 county north of there, right? So I bought my prom dress in Myrtle Beach in high school. So, being back down in that part of the world, where I spent a lot of time down there and talking with the family and different people, my accent has come out more.
I hear it. I heard it on the pod. I did.
I know. I did. I wasn't aware of it, but I was like, oh my gosh, I do sound
I think
a little
more
more Southern than I remember feeling. But it's that, I remember being in college. I went to Duke, and my friends were from all over the country, right? And my roommate was from Iowa, and I took that phone with the long line, the phone, and I went into the closet and just talked to my grandmother. And when I walked out, she said, "Who are you?" What happens when you talk to your grandmother? So I feel like I sound a little bit more Southern than I might sound to my.
Yeah, the Seton occasionally gets. She doesn't think she has it, the Southern accent, as much, but It's there.
Sometimes it comes out.
Yes. Yes, it does.
But then, it's funny because I have a lot of family from the north, and when I was in college, my stepmom would call and she would leave a message. It was back when you had a
Answer machine, I
She's
know.
like, Seton, this is your mom.
Got some water ice.
Who? And I was at a southern school. Like, who is your mom?
Right.
I don't know.
Do
I
you
thought it
still
was-
have your prom dress?
It's so funny that you ask, actually. So my daughter, yes, so Seton and I both have daughters who are seniors in high school, and my daughter has a dance this weekend, and the theme is 80s prom. And I
Please
do
tell me.
not have my prom dresses
Aw.
anymore. They have long since been used as Halloween costumes, and they're just wrecked.
It is
You need to
weird.
go to Goodwill and try to find it.
Well, she's into musical theater at her school, and so she went to the costume room and picked a great one. So no.
It's funny when your kids, not to have it to we're going to dress up like the old days. And then they pick out like back in the 1900s.
My son went to it was his Sadie Hawkins the other night, a very 80s Sadie's. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Fun.
It was very fun, actually. It's cute.
Yes.
But,
Yes. Well, my kid had a oldies day one time or whatever it was at school. And she was dressed in like kind of, I guess, grungy stuff. But I said, what are you dressed as? Early 2000s? It was like the old days, the early 2000s.
I think my husband still has those clothes in his closet.
Yeah.
So they like my Spirit Week this week at my daughter's high school. So she's been raiding our closet. So I get it.
Yeah.
No, it's yeah.
It flies by. Valerie Bauerlein, Wall Street Journal, Camp Swamp Road, part of the Journal layer of podcast and whatnot. We always appreciate it. Again, the book, right, sitting right here. If you look at us on YouTube, The Devil at His Elbow, all about the fall of the Murdaugh dynasty.
And that story, there's something about that story that is, I did an event recently in Camden with Dick Harpootlian. He was talking about his new book. I know y'all have interviewed him about the Pee Wee Gaskins book, Dig Me a Grave. And I did a talk about this book. And there were about 300 people there, y'all. And I was in Gaston County last week, and we had a sellout for a fundraiser for the Literacy Council of like 300 plus people.
Wow,
the story, I think, resonated all over the world, right? That Netflix program was the top non-scripted show of 2023 globally, but it particularly is resonant in the South. And so that's what we see is that the book is still doing well, especially in the Carolinas and Georgia.
It's crazy. Like, people are really still interested in it. I don't know if it has anything to do with this Hulu series, but I mean, when our Blanca stuff kind of went viral, people are really very
well. And I think it's been 2.5 years since the verdict, right? So we're at a point where we're looking back with it. I have had so many people walk up to me and say, I watched every minute of that trial, and it's been so interesting to go back. I think, we get to that moment. There are these big cultural moments, and then it takes a while to kind of process it, and then you start almost
the dust has to settle, and then people are like, wait a second, let me rethink these things and revisit, reflect.
And that's part of what art is great at, like this Hulu series. Movies always lag. Like the Vietnam movies always came out like 5 or 10 years after the event, and so I think that's part of the way we just process these big moments in the culture.
For sure.
Valerie, thank you.
Thank y'all so much. It's always good to be with you.
We'll talk after the next few.
And can I give a shout out to your super fan here in Raleigh, Garrett, my friend Gareth Palmer. Hi, Gareth.
Hey, Garrett.
I know. I love that. I love that we have a friend.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. Thank you, Val. Appreciate it.
Thank y'all.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Always great to talk to Valerie, and make sure you check out her podcast, Camp Swamp Road, through the Wall Street Journal. And after we did that, and after we finished up, we had another lawsuit filed related. Weldon Boyd has filed suit against the attorney for the Spivey family, Mark Tinsley.
It's pretty salacious filing. At kind of the first page, there's a bolded kind of headline that says, Tinsley did not let the truth get in the way of a good story. The filing says that Tinsley engaged in conduct prejudicial to the interests of justice by manufacturing, disseminating, and perpetuating a false narrative through manipulative use of media outlets that has permanently harmed Boyd's ability to obtain a fair trial in the court of this state in any related civil or criminal matters.
The complaint alleges that Mark Tinsley did this, quote, for purposes of self-promotion and self-aggrandizement to establish and or further celebrity status for himself among the masses, end quote. And that Tinsley was, quote, not interested in the actual facts and instead intent on increasing his own public profile for his personal purposes by perpetuating a more salacious story than the facts reveal.
Now, the complaint references release of non-public discovery materials by Tinsley, and also this attempt to create a media firestorm. They're saying he's doing this, I guess, kind of insinuates that he's trying to become famous or something along those lines.
And trying to ruin Boyd's reputation, more or less.
Right, but they're saying he's doing this for himself. They said not in his role as a lawyer, just to promote himself in some way.
Right, yeah.
And as far as I can tell, Boyd in this complaint is not asking for any money. He's just trying to get a ruling as to whether Tinsley's action would prevent his ability to get a fair trial.
Which, by the way, there's no trial at the moment.
Right, we've got to have this hearing to determine if stand your ground applies, but I think he wants to get this case just outright dismissed. I would like to discuss the merits of this case with my dad. It seems a little crazy because I don't know if you can really connect the dots with him being, seeking fame.
Certainly, you hear attorneys all the time talking about their client's guilt or innocence. Or like you hear the state talking about guilt, you hear the defense attorneys talking about innocence, and so I don't know exactly how that legally works. But anyway, Tinsley indicated to the Post and Courier that he will most likely respond by asking that this case be dismissed, and that, quote, I'm not going to be bullied by the likes of Weldon Boyd. He shook his fist. I'm imagining that anyway.
You did not see that. That is Matt's reenactment of that. Watch us on YouTube and you can see it.
Hearing is scheduled on the 18th of November in Horry County to determine if the stand your ground applies. This is not the hearing on that lawsuit against Tinsley. This is the stand your ground hearing.
Right.
18th, so, yeah. Okay, reviews.
We had a couple of good ones on Apple. Mel 2025 says, y'all just keep getting better. Excellent analysis and discussion of recent happenings, court filings, theories, and expert guests. I appreciate your ability to cover all sides and let listeners come to their own conclusions. Keep up the good work and great guests coming.
Then from the Miss Todd, thank you for your interview with Blanca. I've been following the podcast since you started, following the Murdaugh family. And I listen to Matt weekday mornings on the radio.
Yay.
107.9. The mix. You're doing great work as always, and keep it up. And then there's some downsides.
Yeah, so the YouTube episodes, it was 2 parts with Blanca that are on YouTube, and we got a lot of comments that said that we interrupted.
A lot, but a few, right?
A few. Well, no, there were more. There were probably like, I don't know, 5, 10 that we interrupted too much.
If you're watching on YouTube, because the podcast is edited a little bit, the audio part, I will say, and Blanca will be the first to say it, and her co-author, sometimes we have to bring them back, bring her back in.
We have to steer. We kind of try to keep our episodes to a certain length, so sometimes we do have to steer conversations. But I do appreciate that that comments, because the other thing is sometimes I think I do interrupt because, especially I think when we talked to her, it was later in the day, and you of course get up super early in the morning because of your radio show. And I'm more of a morning person personally. So I think we kind of get tired. And that was a long interview. So at that point, maybe we kind of lose focus and we do interrupt a little bit. I mean, it is something to keep mindful. She was the one that you wanted to hear from, not us.
Right. So I'm not saying that they are wrong. There are times when I would see her searching, I felt like she would pause a long time. I felt like she was...
I do that, and people said that at the beginning because I'd be like, my eyes would roll in the back of my head, and you'd be like, I got to help her out. And that's what you've been interviewing people for a long time.
Right.
And sometimes you realize when someone's struggling as the person being interviewed that you need to jump in and help them.
That's what I feel like I'm doing. If not, if it comes across, that's what I feel like I'm doing is keeping.
Well, sometimes you interrupt, and sometimes I do. What? It's annoying.
What do I do? What? It happens, sure. No question. So then on the... I would get it backwards.
I said it so many times wrong because I
Did you?
am dyslexic. I said I listened back to our interview with crime and cask. I said cask and crime.
Okay.
I don't know if that means anything about my priorities.
Yeah.
But,
Yes.
no, I've said it wrong so many times. But we did have a few comments
Yes.
on Spotify.
Kara McKee Zubin or something says, you need to stop with your Mandy Matney BS. I enjoy your podcast, but it all comes across as addictive and bullish. Let it go. It's ridiculous. I don't remember the last time we even mentioned her name. It's been a long, long time. We thought it was important on this one because her comments about him and what he had to say were out there. And we were already getting people telling us, this is what she said. Why are you doing this? When she says this about him and says, we have, we are scum of the earth or whatever it is. So we thought it was important for him to answer that. To give him some credibility.
I've also received equally good comments. I've heard, somebody who was kind of suspect reach out to me personally and said, I thought that maybe he was going to be kind of out there, but he wasn't. I really thought it was a really good interview. And then a lot of people on our Facebook page have commented that they're just so happy to see any sort of movement in the Stephen Smith case because it has just been so slow. So many unanswered questions, and just any movement is good movement.
Like Josephine says, she got right to the point. You both suck.
Oh no,
for having him on, yes. But again, you heard the tape that he has.
And an interview is not an endorsement. We are willing to talk to anyone. In fact, I tried to see if Mandy Matney would come on and talk about the Hulu.
We did. We tried.
Series. We did not get a response.
So yeah, we don't have anybody. We have people on, and what he was revealing, we knew was to be true. He did talk to somebody.
Oh yeah, I listened to the interview with this source, and I would say, I think it's very credible.
Right now, whether or not how that translates to legal,
I don't know. Like,
10 years later, there's a thing.
I was talking to someone. I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent right now, but
I'd like to interrupt you first. I'm kidding.
you can. When there was a problem with the chain of custody with Stephen's clothes, so maybe some of these initial investigative mishaps, because there was a lot of confusion about which law enforcement agency was going to be handling this case. Because I think the first they thought it was a gunshot to the head, and then it turns out the pathologist looks and says hit and run.
Or
so
bat
then
at some point.
so it was confusing whether it was going to be under the sheriff's department, highway patrol, SLED. Lots of different people were involved in the first days of this investigation. And one of the things that happened was I think there not proper chain of custody with Stephen's clothes. And so I believe there were some paint flecks or something on his clothes, but you probably can't do that. So as a prosecutor, some of these things maybe influence your ability to be able to successfully prosecute a case.
Because they don't probably have anything. The truck is long fixed and gone by now. Right. So
And
if the truck was in it, allegedly.
I mean, and we haven't seen what the results of the second autopsy, revealed.
Trooper Moore was there, remember?
One of my favorite interviews, and he wholeheartedly did not believe that Stephen Smith was a hit and run.
Yeah.
And there are many other people who are under that same belief.
So reach out to us. Like I said, we the criticism, even though we push back a little, we welcome it. We're
just trying to give you an insight. Sometimes it's not as easy. Like, it's so funny. People are like, "Oh, you're terrible." I'm like, I was reading some of those YouTube comments late at night, and I was like, people, you don't realize sometimes it's a lot harder than it looks. Sometimes it's easier, but it is sometimes harder.
Yeah. Again, I try to help the guest. She's not a professional speaker. Try to stay on point, and also
we were her first interview. She said, "Yeah." And I thought she was a fantastic guest.
She was great. She's great. It seems like a really cool person. There you go. We'd love it if you support our sponsors like Quince, and go to our different sites, the YouTube channel and the Facebook page to comment. And there you go. We will talk soon, friend.